From the studios of Boise State Public Radio News, I'm Gemma Gaudette. More Idaho Matters right now. Last year, parents here in the U.S. reported being overwhelmed, even burnt out. However, one group of parents that's often overlooked are the 1 in 15 parents with disabilities. And they may have some wisdom for the rest of us. Author Jessica Slice is joining us now to talk more about her perspective, which she shares in her new book, Unfit Parent, A Disabled Mother Challenges an Inaccessible World. Jessica, I want to welcome you to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Jessica, tell us a little bit about yourself because you have an illness that impacts you. And so, can you first just tell us a little bit about yourself and your illness that you live with?
Sure. So I became sick at 28. I'm 42 now, and it happened very suddenly. I was actually on a hike and got heat exhaustion, and that triggered a neurological condition, which I've learned is secondary to a genetic condition. And the one is called POTS, which is the neurological condition, and then Ehlers-Danlos is the genetic. And what they mean is that I experience nausea, dizziness. I have trouble standing for more than about 30 seconds. I can't sit upright for more than about 5 minutes. I have chronic pain and then just a, variety of other symptoms. And
Hmm.
before I became sick, my life was extremely busy, extremely active. I was someone who was like always on the go, would wake up and go for a run and then work a long day and then go out with friends and traveled all the time. So there was a real kind of like before and after narrative in my story.
Hmm. So I was reading an interview recently that you gave, and you talked about how when you were a new mom, you joined this new moms group, and how you all of a sudden started seeing kind of differences in your perspective versus their perspectives. Can you take us back to that time and talk to us a little bit about that?
So my perspective on that is certainly different now than it was at the time. The things I observed at the time is that I joined this group and there were two things that were different about me from the rest of the group. One, I was the only disabled person, or at least the only person who I know of as being disabled.
Hmm.
And then two, I was the only one who hadn't given birth to my kids. So my first child, we met her through the foster system as a newborn. And then the other detailed difference is that everyone in the group seemed to have gotten the same memos, both about what to buy, what to worry about, just they all seem to be having this very similar experience. Like one, they all had almost identical strollers and car seats. Two, they all were importing their formula from Europe, which I didn't even know was an option.
Oh.
Three, they all kept talking about things like, I don't want my identity to be only as a mom. There were all these kind of like similar concerns. And at the time, I felt really like I must be doing something wrong. Like, how did they all know about this, this way to be a mom that I didn't hear? And then I also had some insecurities about being disabled.
Hmm.
From my perspective now, I think that it was actually my disability that had sort of insulated me from some of these ways that parenting can be made to feel like the only way to do it is perfectly or by buying the right
Mm.
products, or that if you buy the right things, you somehow can protect yourself from having difficulty or protect your child from harm. I think that I had spent so many years trying to get used to my own predictable body that I wasn't as easy of a mark. Like I didn't fall into the
Mm.
same, I guess the internet hadn't sucked me into this like purchasing rabbit hole that it had other people. And so I just bought the cheapest stroller. I just bought the cheapest stroller with which actually like was a stroller for 6 months old. So I shouldn't, it was the wrong stroller, but it was fine. And then I didn't even know that you shouldn't just get the formula at the grocery store. Um and my perspective now is that I'm actually kind of thankful that disability gave me that.
Yeah.
It kind of allowed me to be in the moment and put a little less pressure on myself.
What I found interesting about this is you said your experience was relatively peaceful compared to these other moms. Now, I too was in a new moms group as a brand new mom.
Oh,
And first off, I bought my formula from Costco. I
okay.
didn't know you could get it from Europe. Uh, oh, so there you go. It's
Yeah,
the
Cheeto.
cheapest, right? And guess what? He's just turned 17 and he's 6'2" and he's still growing. So I'm pretty sure the Costco brand was fine. And he's a 4-point student. So I think
Okay.
that that was okay. With all of that said, when I read that you said your experience was relatively peaceful, I was like, okay, please explain this because it was absolutely less than peaceful for me. And when we first started talking, and you said how you said like you were so active and your life was going and going and going, but then when you got this illness, your life literally slowed down. And I was like, well,
Yeah.
that's exactly what happens when you become a mom. And
That's
I mean,
exactly it. Yes.
yeah, that's exactly what happens. Is it's like your
Uh-huh.
life comes to a full stop. You hit a brick
Mhm.
wall, and it is literally like your entire life, every part of your being is all of a sudden wrapped up in this little 7-pound human who has made you just stop, and you can't do anything about it. So you can fight it or you can learn to accept it. And I fought it for a while. But so can
Mhm.
you talk a little bit about that? Because that was just so profound to me. Not just what you said it was that it was relatively peaceful, but how your life did stop and you had to readjust before motherhood.
Right. And so, yes, I mean, you're really getting at like a big thesis in the book is that I think adjusting to disability requires a lot of the same skills that motherhood does. And so, what I found when I wrote the book is I interviewed a couple dozen disabled parents and a couple dozen non disabled. And with only one exception of the interviews I did, the non disabled parents had experienced what you did, like a profound sense of destabilization after becoming
Mm-hmm.
a mom. That the recovery from labor, if they had labored, was extremely difficult. The adjustment to a slower, unpredictable life was extremely difficult. There's this way that caring for a newborn is like an intense relationship with disability because you are recovering if you've given birth from labor, but then
Mm-hmm.
also a baby is so unpredictable and needy. Like even the way they breathe is erratic in those early days. And so it's like this constant reminder like we're fragile, we're fragile, we're fragile.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
think if you're new to it, if you're new to fragility, it's like, "Oh my god, how will I ever recover?" And if you're not, which disabled people often are not. Okay, and so when I interviewed the disabled people, they said, it was fine." And it was interesting because these disabled
Wow.
people I interviewed had extremely difficult labors, complicated recoveries. Many had to be rehospitalized for complications. It wasn't without hiccups, but they had been dealing with unpredictable bodies for so long and with their own fragility and with like the own limited version of life that getting
Mm-hmm.
used to a newborn kind of like slotted into that. And that was the case for me. I remember I felt so at home caring for my daughter when she was a newborn that I
Wow.
talked to my therapist and said I was worried that I wasn't anxious or having a hard time. I was like, "This is supposed to be hard, right? Because I just love it." And she was like, "No, I think you should just feel thankful." But
Okay, and I have to say though, I think this is so wonderful that you've written this book truly because when you say, "Oh, this is easy," I literally, I mean, I'm talking like my son, I'm talking 17 years ago, right? That this
uh-huh.
happened, almost to the day, and I vividly remember sitting there rocking him and just being like, "This really, this is my life. This is what it's come down to. Like, this is." I don't know if I can do that. I don't know if I can do this for the next 18 years. Like,
Mhm.
how can I do that? What did I do? And I don't necessarily think this was a
Yeah.
great decision on my part. And I can't change it. Like I
Yeah.
can't give him
Yeah.
back. Like I'm in it. And when I tell you it was the most profound change of my life was
Mhm.
becoming a parent. I'm talking outside of
Mhm.
losing my own parents. I mean,
Mm,
losing jobs. I mean,
mhm.
this changed me more than anything in the world. So reading your book, and I'm like, this is incredible. I think you have
Mm,
such
mm.
wisdom. So again,
Thanks.
can you talk to us kind of truly? So what do you think we can learn from parents dealing with their own disabilities? And maybe this idea of you, frankly, we're not perfect, we're not going to get it right. But how do we
Mhm.
learn that early on in parenthood instead of maybe, 5, 10 years into it?
I mean, I think I think what disability has taught me is that I mean, there's so many ways to go about this, but one is that we are very, very bad at knowing what will make our lives good. And
Mm,
if you had told me at 25 what my life would look like now, if you had said, okay, instead of traveling around the world, you'll spend most of your day in an adjustable bed or in your power wheelchair. You'll many days you won't even leave, like a couple of rooms, and you will just have this tiny, much, much smaller life than you ever dreamed of. I would think, I don't know if I could survive that. And then the wild thing is I actually like my life more now. And it's not that I'm happier, though that's probably
hmm.
true. It's that my life before, back when I thought I could achieve perfection, I it felt really dishonest. It felt like I never was it felt like right around the corner I was about to have a good life. It was like as soon as a couple more
uh,
things are in place or a couple as soon as I do a couple more things better, this is going to be fine. And I think one, we'll never get there, and two, we just have no idea what will make our lives better. And
mm,
there's an honesty in disability because you have to talk about needs, you have to acknowledge limitations, you have to relate to how fragile life is and to the inevitability of suffering and to the kind of absolutely heartbreaking reality that our kids will suffer and that we can't ultimately prevent it. And in all of that honesty and all of that unpleasantness, I think it's in there that life becomes actually good and true.
mm. What
I
about
guess so.
this
What would the
idea?
Yeah,
I
go
was
ahead.
going to say,
Sorry.
no, no, it's okay. I was going to ask you too, like, what do you think within our culture? I think we're very afraid to identify with anything that's frail, with anything that's weak. I think
Yes.
that is
Yes.
something within our culture in the United States that fragility is seen as bad, that weakness
Hmm.
is seen as bad. But at, I think you become more human as a parent, and what I mean by that is all of a sudden there's a reckoning with your own mortality. There's a reckoning with the fact that you don't have control,
No,
and
you don't.
right. So, uh, is that part of it too? Is how do we almost say almost give into the fact that we're not going to do this perfectly right?
We're not going to succeed. We will
Yeah.
not give our kids a perfect life. We may not even give them a happy life. Like they will suffer. Like every single person
Mm-hmm.
will suffer. And I don't know. I'm currently convinced that the thing that really messes a kid up and messes up a life is when you don't tell them the truth about what they're experiencing. And when
Mm,
you make people feel like they are to blame for their suffering. That if we can tell the truth about suffering, then I feel like that's the way you help someone survive.
mm-hmm. I just said to my youngest kid the other day, he was upset about something, and I was like, and I just finally, I kind of had it, and I finally looked at him and I said, I don't know how to tell you this, what, but any other way but saying life isn't fair. It's just not fair. I mean, that's just life. And you're going to have a long, unhappy life if you expect everything to be fair. Even in this house, you are going to have a really long, unhappy life. And And he's in seventh grade.
Yeah.
I mean, and he just looked at me and I said, that's just the way it is. And yep, things are going to be unfair between you and your brother. That is just the way it is. And I don't know how to give you any other advice than that. It ended the
Yeah, I mean,
conversation, which
that's
I
it,
was
and then
happy
how do we
about.
live
But
that too? How do we show our kids that we're living that? They're that we don't think that life is going to be fair. We have to like practice that too, and I think that that means we have to believe it. We have to believe it's not in our power to give ourselves a perfect life.
mhm. What do you hope is the takeaway from this book, Jessica? Because honestly, I think it is a must read. Really,
Thank
maybe
you.
if you are even thinking about having a child, or maybe you're in that mist of new parenthood.
I think the takeaway is that the line between disabled and not is kind of non-existent. That we like to think there's this group of non-disabled people that should be like all powerful and be able to do everything on their own without help and figure it out, and it's just a matter of like optimization and willpower. And then there's this group of disabled people who are like completely incapable, and because they need care they're incapable of giving care, and that we're like kind of made invisible by our needs. And I think actually every single person has needs, every single person has limitations, and of course disability is real, but there isn't a stark divide. Everybody, like
Mm,
every like physical body will fail. And almost every person, if you don't die tragically, will become disabled and will have additional limitations. And so I think kind of reckoning with our own fear of fragility and mortality would make the world much more humane for disabled people, because we would be included and not feared and not
mm,
pitied. And disdain is like lives right there next to pity. And so reckoning with our own fear of fragility and death would make the world more humane for everyone.
mm. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for taking time to talk with us. I really appreciate the conversation.
Thank you so much.
We've been speaking with author Jessica Slice about her new book, Unfit Parent, A Disabled Mother Challenges an Inaccessible World. It is out now. You've been listening to Idaho Matters from Boise State Public Radio. I'm Gemma Gaudette.